Hi everyone, I'm Antonella, 505 Games' Director of Global Community, working on the PC version of Death Stranding and Death Stranding Director's Cut. Death Stranding is a game all about the importance of establishing connections and building bridges, and that's a theme we wanted to celebrate with our community. Earlier this month, we invited our players to post some questions for two people over at Kojima Productions that don't need much of an introduction. Today, I have the huge honor of sitting down with Mr. Hideo Kojima, Mr. Yoji Shinkawa, and Mr. Aki Saito to go through some of those questions from our community. We hope you enjoy this conversation with our friends over at Kojima Productions. Hi everyone, how are you all doing today?
Well, I've been working so much, I'm so tired.
I did see on social media, I don't envy you at all.
Did you get some sleep? And he said, no, I haven't.
Amazing. We've received a lot of questions from our community, and I'm going to try and, we'll try and just reduce it a little bit. So, yeah, I guess we'll start with the first one. And this is actually a question to the pair of you. You've been working together for over 25 years now, and at your own, you've got your own studio now. What is the key to a long-lasting relationship?
2人がこうやるそのコツというか、どうしてこうずっと、はい。
25年も長いですね。そうなんですよ。まあ年齢も離れてたと思ってたら、今となってはそんなことも。50ですね。8歳しか変えない。そうですね。あの頃はものすごい若い感じだった。まあ違う感覚があるっていう、そこじゃないですか。まあ、ものづくりの情熱とかは一緒ですけど、やっぱりあるものを見たときに感じるものっていうのはやっぱりしんちゃんと僕は違うので、そこが、まあ、同じ分もありますけど、違うからこそこう、お互い興味があるというか、一緒にやってて面白いところですよね。
So yeah, we've been 25 years. It's exciting. I became, Yoji said I'm 50 now, but we were so young when we first met. We thought that we had so much age difference, but probably not. The key is probably we have different senses. We kind of think and feel differently, but the passion is the same. But since we feel a little different, I think that's the key that we get along so well. We kind of share the inspirations. Of course, some are similar, but majority is like different. That's why we get along together, I guess.
I really, really like that. And, speaking of connections and relationships, I think that brings us on quite nicely to our next question from one of our users, which is for you, Mr. Kojima. This user says, for me, the help from other players and seeing the constructions in the world of Death Stranding was an iconic part of the atmosphere for the game and the uniqueness of the gameplay. Especially during those BT boss battles. When you and your team were planning development for the game, why was this the type of multiplayer chosen for the game? And were there any other concepts or ideas that you explored during the development phase? And this user says, thank you as always for bringing your beautiful stories and one-of-a-kind games to life.
ガンを持って戦うっていうのは非常に直感的でゲームでは一番面白いんですけど、オンラインゲーム、オンライン対戦っていうのもメタルで作りましたけど、そんなに上手くなってですね、オンラインで誘われていくと、ボコボコにやられるというのもありまして、そういうものではない、もうちょっとこう違うつながりというか、お互い間接的にサポートし合うようなゲームをあってもいいのかなということで考えたのが、ベストストーリーですね。
Well, I know that games are like you have battles, have guns, and you kind of, just battle together, and that's fun. I don't deny that. But for the online element, when I kind of do those kind of games, we did it with Metal Gear as well. But I'm not really good at those, online battle. So when I go online, everyone just beats me up. So I just thought that maybe a different kind of online is kind of needed. And I wanted to do a different way of showing connectivity. And it's not a direct connection, but an indirect kind of connection I thought would really happen. So that's why I put in Death Stranding in this game.
トランプとかチェスとか、昔からあるゲームとかもそうなんですけど、スポーツもある種、勝ち負け の世界で、それはそれで、自分を高めるためにはいいと思うんですけども、全員が勝つというか、そういう、ゲームもあればいいかなっていう、そういう単純な発想です。
Well, the simple, thinking is like, okay, like a game of cards or chess or even sports. I know that there is a winner and a loser distinctively, but I thought maybe, that's good for raising the bar of yourself to compete. However, I thought, well, there should be a way where everyone could be a winner. And that's why I thought this connection was good to put in our game.
I really like that because as a community manager, we want to enforce positive connections between people and positive interactions. So personally, yeah, big fan of this approach.
私はこのアプローチすごいファンです。本当にありがとうございます。
Our next question is for you, Mr. Shinkawa. To Shinkawa-san, your art is always so refreshing and inspirational to look at. I wanted to ask, how much free rein has Kojima-san given you to create the characters, or do you work specifically to his tastes? Do you add things that you like, or is it a strict feedback style?
監督からのオーダーを受けてやるのか、もしくは新川さんが自由にやって、それでフィードバックをやり取りするんでしょうか。どういう形でキャラクターを作っていくんでしょうか。
これはずっと変わらないですけど、基本的にはやっぱり監督のプロットがあって、それに対しての僕なりの解釈っていうので、何点か絵を描いて見てもらって、で、その中からOK、NG をいただいて、全然違う方向性のものとかも、その中で、偶然的にとか、生まれることもあるんですけども、そこを監督が、僕のうまみを、引き出してくれるというか、そんな感じでキャラクターが成長していく、作っていく中で成長していくっていうような感じだと思いますね。
Well, it hasn't changed over the years. I kind of work on first Mr. Kojima's plot, and I kind of digest that myself. And then I draw up a couple of drawings and show Hideo how it is. He says, okay or not good. And then we kind of brush up from there. Sometimes he even says, the things that were totally on a different direction by accident and happens. And sometimes that grows. But basically, I think Hideo kind of really tries to pull the great part of me. And that's how, the process of the character actually going in a growth at the same time. So that's how we do it.
That sounds absolutely awesome.
しんちゃんに、こういう世界でこういうキャラで、こういう特徴があって、こういう役割のものをデザインしてくださいと。それでやり取りをするんですけど、本当に面白いのは、それじゃない落書きがいっぱいあるんですよね。で、昔はですね、A4 のところに、落書きもあったんですよ。最近やっぱりもうさすがにしんちゃんのプロなんで、A4 のところに、指定したキャラの A のイメージ、B のイメージで紙が分かれてるんですけど、しんちゃんの部屋に行くと、別の紙に、落書きがあって、それは全く発注してない、合間に書いたような本なんですけど、これがもうまさにいいものがあって、でそういうのを見つけては、ゲームのフィードバックにするという、そこがやっぱり面白いところですね。これ外注でやるとそういうことはできないと思うので、そこは大切にしてます。
Well, when I kind of course, explain the world and the plot, like to Yoji, I kind of explain and say, this is the plot, this is the story, this is kind of the thing that I want you to design, and we go, from there. But what's important is actually his scribbling, I must say. In the past, he had this, A4 kind of paper drawing, and it was all scribble. But of course, we're all professionals now. So when I order something, he has this character A, character B, and image, and it's all laid out correctly. However, if I go to his room, I sometimes still find this scribbling on another paper, and I get inspirations of it. And we kind of sometimes grow that inspiration, and that's really fun. And we give feedback together. This is only possible because we're together, and we can't do this if, I outsource to someone. So that's the real importance that I feel that I want to keep in the studio.
I really like that. I really like that approach. It reminds me of actually when I was I've got an art background, and I remember being at university and college, and sometimes it was those brainstorming sessions or those moments where you're just scribbling on paper where some of your biggest ideas come from. So I really like that. On to our next question. So this one comes from a user over on Weibo, and it's to you, Mr. Kojima. So this user asks, Mr. Kojima, from the perspective of game design, how does Death Stranding drive players to voluntarily engage in constructing and yet create an unparalleled sense of satisfaction and happiness? I'd like to know the thoughts behind this unique process.
やっぱりゲームっていうのは、自分のために遊ぶんですね。やっぱりアイテムを集めたり、自分が強くなったり、自分のレベルを上げたり、自分の装備を固める、何かをすることで自分が他者より強くなるっていう行為が根底にあって、ただそれをすると先ほどの勝ち負けじゃないですけど、そこはそのルールっていうのを崩せないので、デスストではやっぱりそれをなくして、お金に還元できない、人のサポートというか、人のために、何かをすると。で、それで自分が強くなるわけではないんですけど、いいねがもらえるだけっていう、そのシステムを作ろうとしたんですけど、やっぱりなかなか、理解はされなかったんですけども、ある程度作り込んでいく上で、スタッフがやってるうちに、喜んでくれたというか、やろうとしていることを理解してくれたんで、そこは、形になるまでは難しかったですけど、結構見えてからは早かったです。協力して、こういう建築物どうとかもスタッフの方から来ましたので。
Usually a game is basically you kind of gain something for yourself, like an item or you power up or your level goes up and you make it, yourself stronger, your character is stronger. But again, as I said before, that kind of leads to win or lose and that kind of thing, and benefit is only for yourself. But I wanted to kind of clear this in Death Stranding. And it wasn't like the worth getting like money in the game or like some advantages in the game, but thinking about what could we do for others. So, and basically what I planned first was it was nothing. You don't get anything, just likes. And we had this controversy where people didn't understand when I first explained it. And we had a lot of discussions, but after a while, when we created this system, the staff got really happy with the system and they understood it. So it was really difficult until we kind of made it to really test it out. But after it was apparent in the game, everyone was like cooperating as well. Even some staff saying, hey, why don't we do this, infrastructure or this utility, or why don't we create it together? And that was the point that I was aiming in this system.
I really like that. I think as a player myself, one thing I found, I recently jumped back into Director's Cut, and I was trying to again familiarize myself with what I was doing, where I was going. But what I thought was like hugely wholesome was I was walking around the world and there were ladders out there ready for me, and it was like it was so nice, and it was like, okay, there are people here helping me. And I guess it kind of inspires you to do the same thing. So you want to go and do the same thing. You want to leave ladders or ropes or whatever for other users to come in and enjoy. So again, going back to my previous point, I really appreciate, that kind of element in the game, because it's something I'm a big fan of, that positive enforcement and just helping others.
だと思います。本当は人を助けようと思う気持ちが自然に生まれます。
狙いとしてはデスストの中でそういう感じを得た人が、自分の部屋から出て街を歩くと橋があり、誰かが作った道路があるので、そこでゲームの中で思ったことを、同時に社会の中でも感じてもらったらいいかなと。橋も道路も誰かが作ってるんだというのを分かってもらえればいいかなという感じです。
Well, the real kind of goal here, I thought, was like after you play Death Stranding and you feel like what you said, and if you step out in the real world, out of your room, you'll see the roads and the bridges. And I want people to kind of feel like, yeah, someone had built this road and bridges in real society. And I wanted to kind of make, people feel the same way that they felt in playing the game in Death Stranding.
Well, I think your team did a phenomenal job because it works beautifully in
それ
game.
はもう、私もそうなってます。だから、チームがもう大成功だと思いますよ、監督。
On to my next question. Again, this is for you, Mr. Kojima, if that's okay. And it's quite a personal one, I think. So for Mr. Kojima, Sam struggles to find strength within him to step up as a father of BB and learn to connect to others. Do you see a bit of yourself in Sam? And to what extent are other characters' development influenced by your own life experiences?
最近や経験の影響がやっぱりこう反映したっていうことはあるんでしょうか。
まあ、これはもう、あらゆる作家、小説家もアーティストもミュージシャンも俳優さんもそうだと思うんですけど、表現者の人っていうのはやっぱり、まあ、自分の、まあ、過去、あるいは自分の実生活の何かしらが影響しているのだと思います。まあ、この部分かどうだとは言いませんけど、全く全部が 100%、フィクションっていうか、頭の中で考えられたものっていうことは、まあ、ありえないと思いますね。
Well, I think, yeah, to an extent, like all creators, such as artists or writers or musicians or actors, I think the expression, the people who does expressions are the people who have this influence when they create a character or a story. I think it really influences. I can't really say which specific part. However, I can't say it's 100% fiction. So, you know, that's probably a normal thing for any creators.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I guess we move on to a slightly lighter question now for you, Mr. Shinkawa.
すいません、新川さん、軽めの質問いきます。
This user here asked quite an interesting question, something that I hadn't really thought of before until they asked, and I was like, oh, that's a really good point. This user asks, why are there no such things as like planes in Death Stranding? In a worldview where science is pretty advanced, this user's asking, should there be airplanes that can cross the game world?
いいんじゃないですかと思ったんですけど、どうしてないんでしょう。
そこはね、気づいてほしくなかったんですけど、ただ、まあ、世界設定的には、まあ、上空に快楽物質がこう充填してて、で、あまり上空には飛べないっていう設定ではあるんですよね。
劣化してしまうんで、人工衛星もドローンも飛行機も飛べない。だから陸地を歩いていくしかないんです。
So, well, actually, this was a point that I wish that the users didn't realize, to be honest. But in the world setting, in Death Stranding, the sky is filled with chiral, meaning that you can't really fly. It gets like the time kind of passes with the chiral density so high. So in that world, we don't have any satellites, we don't have any airplanes, or we don't have drones or anything that's flying. That's why you have to walk and traverse or travel.
That makes perfect sense. Absolutely. It was just really quite an interesting question that I hadn't really thought of before, but that explains everything.
気づかなかったんで、パッと気づいてちょっとまあ聞いてみようかなと思ってありがとうございます。
ここはまあちょっと盲点というか、企画の弱点でもあるんですけどね、ある種。
Well, yeah, well, as I said, this was kind of something a blind spot, exactly. But I think we worked out very well.
Absolutely, for sure. Now, something we touched on, I guess, at the start of this conversation was around relationships. And, you know, something that I absolutely love to see as a community manager is how strong the connections can be between developers and publishers and our players, which brings me on quite nicely to this next question. You two together have, you know, inspired the works of many fans around the world, and the fan base keeps growing. And, you know, now social media is full of fan art, cosplay, theories, comments, stories about your work. Now, this user's question is, like the way you have inspired so many of these community members to create all this kind of content, do you ever look at the fan art of others, and does that ever inspire, you know, what you do? And did you ever kind of, you know, go to the desk and implement something in game that was actually inspired by maybe something you saw on social media from a fan or something like that?
まあコスプレとかファンアートとか見ますけど、それに影響を受けるっていうことはまあないんですけど、どちらかというと、コスプレをしてほしい。 コスプレイヤーがしたくなるキャラクターはどうなのかっていうのを、キャラ設計の時に必ず考えてます。例えば、誰でも簡単に、白衣を着たら、白衣を買ってきただけでオタコンになれるとか、これは初心者向きですけど、もっと作り込んで、自分の体型とか、そういうのも含めて、高度なメイクが必要で、それをやることで、コスプレができるっていう、いろんな人に向けて、難易度も含めて、キャラクターを好きになってもらって、でコスプレをしてもらうと。あるいはそのキャラクターを好きになってもらって、イラストを、描いてもらえるようなものを作ろうとしてます。ちょっと変な言い方ですけど、あらかじめ、皆さんの中で、バズって、それが、ユーザーの皆さんの、二次クリエーションというか、創造性を訴えかけるようなものになればということで、結構設計をしてます。
Well, actually, I see a lot of cosplays and fan arts, and I'm really thankful for that. But it doesn't really kind of, counter influence me in a way. But I'll tell you something. When we design a character, we always think about people who would cosplay at the beginning. Let me explain. At the design stage, we think about this. Like, for instance, to all kinds of levels of people who cosplay. Like for the people who don't have so much money or is a novice to cosplay, just wearing this white robe will turn it into otacon. So we put that kind of in. And people who are a little bit more advanced and think about their height or their figure and put on makeup and turn into that character, that's a little bit higher level. So I even think about the difficulty setting. The point is, I want the people to like the character and love it, and then want to cosplay as well. That's already, a basic thinking when we design a character. Same with the illustrations. We just want to make sure that the users will be happy, fall in love with that character, and decide to kind of, draw something. So we think about this beforehand, and everyone kind of does this. It makes a real buzz, and it stimulates the creation to these users to make the second, creation like cosplay or art. And that's, I think, what's always important when I create my characters.
I really like that. And I think the cosplayers who do view this video will really appreciate that. And I think that's just going to inspire them to, I guess, up their game, if you will. But I really like that way of thinking. It's really nice. And actually, this brings us on to our final question. This is to both of you. And, it is related to character, I guess. What was the most interesting character to design in Death Stranding? And do any of the characters have anything special about them that you think most people might have missed?
もしくはキャラクター作るときにこのキャラクターが一番面白かったみたいな点で、監督、新川さん、それぞれデスストで好きなキャラクターはありますか？どうぞ。
一番苦労したのはやっぱり主人公のサムのキャラクターをデザインするのが一番苦労したんですけど、思い入れっていう部分で言うと、やっぱクリフが好きですかねっていうところですね。演じられた、マツさんもそうなんですけど、とにかく、スキャンさせていただいたりして、でそれを 3D モデルに簡易的に出力しただけなんですけど、それだけでもめちゃめちゃ美しくてかっこいいっていうのが、すごいびっくりして、自分がキャラクターデザインをしてこれができるかというとなかなかそれは難しいなっていうところは正直ありまして、そういった部分でもやっぱマッツさんの演じたクリフっていうのは非常にかっこいいなっていうので好きですね。
Well, the character that I had the most difficulty trying to finalize was actually the main character, Sam, in terms of design. That was really tough to finalize it. But if you ask me who I kind of have a likeness or inspiration towards was probably Cliff, because it was played by Matt Mikkelsen. And even when we scanned him and made it to a simple 3D model, it was so beautiful and it was so cool. And I was so surprised. I kind of thought that even, hey, will I be able to create this kind of character from scratch? Probably not. So that was awesome. And I thought that, you know, Matt's playing Cliff was definitely one of my favorite characters.
Amazing. That's really, really cool. I think that is, they're all our questions.
Sorry, you didn't get the Hideo's answer.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
He said, oh, I shouldn't answer maybe.
No, please do.
まあね、しんちゃんともいろいろフィードバックしながら作ったんで、俳優さんも素敵な方ばっかりなんで、非常にこうみんな好きですね。なんですけど、選ぶとすれば、唯一 3D スキャンをしていない、ルーちゃん。彼はコミュニケーション能力がないというか、セリフがないので、言葉を喋らないんですよ。で、世界でコミュニケーションをしていく上で、彼は常に一緒にいるんですけど、喋らない。いつも泣いてるか、笑ってるか、怯えてるかしかない。その彼とずっと旅をして、そこで気持ちを通わせるっていう、一番厄介なというか難しい関係性を持ったキャラだったんですけども、結構それは成功したとは思ってますんで、まあそういう意味では、ルーちゃんが一番好きというか、僕の携帯の待ち受けもルーちゃんになってるんで、まあ彼かな、彼と彼女かな。はい。
Well, I have to say, I had a lot of fun doing feedback with Yoji, creating the characters. And of course, all the actors that I worked with was just awesome, wonderful people. And I love all the characters. But if you ask me to select one, I would have to select a character that we didn't scan. And it's Lou, the baby, because, well, she has no lines, no words at all. And the communication is very difficult in the game. Although you're always together, she either laughs or cries or gets scared, but you have to travel together and you have to create that bond relationship. And I think I was able to do it. And I really like it in terms of that aspect. Even my phone screen is actually Lou. So I could really say my favorite character is Lou.
まあ、設定的にはハードマンが結構自分でもひらめいたという感じなんで、キャラの設定的にはハードマン好きですよね。
But if you say like the setting, the background of the character, I really like Hartman because I thought when I thought about this background, I was like, yes, this new idea, great Hartman. So I really like him.
ハードマンだけでシリーズ作れる感じなんで。
I could even probably make a spin-off series with Hartman, even, I thought.
I would love to see that. No, I like the fact you brought up Lou. I'll never forget playing through the game myself. And yeah, I was, you know, I'm not the most maternal person, but I found that, you know, I needed to protect Lou. And if anything happened, I would be mortified. So I went on this emotional roller coaster playing through Death Stranding, something that I didn't expect from the initial get-go. But, you know, so thank you for giving players that experience, because I've never had that in a game before.
揺さぶるっていうのはゲームでこれほど揺さぶるっていうのはなかったので、本当にお二人に感謝しています。
Amazing. I think that is everything. Oh no, actually, I think yes, that is everything. I think we can wrap this up now. A huge thank you, Mr. Kojima. A huge thank you, Mr. Shinkawa, and of course, Mr. Aki Saito. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's an honor. We at 505 Games absolutely love working with Kojima Productions. It's a huge privilege to look after this community, and yeah, a big thank you again for taking the time to sit down and answer some of these community questions today.
後ろの置いてあるもの、愛が感じれるんで。
He said,
ありがとうございます。
I see your background. I feel the love of the game already. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. No, I've become a huge fan, and it's always an honor to work on a game that you're a big fan of as well. So thank you. You know, on a professional level, this is amazing. As a gamer, yeah, this is an absolute privilege. So thank you.
はい。
ありがとうございます。こちらこそ。
こちらこそ
はい。
Thank you so much.
Thank you.